On the afternoon of July 12, 1916, a group of boys were swimming in a creek in New Jersey. Not the ocean. A creek. Matawan Creek, a narrow, muddy, brown tidal channel about 11 miles inland from the Atlantic, running past a brickyard and a wooden dock in a town that looked more like somewhere in the Midwest than a beach resort. There were no waves. You could see the far bank. Children had swum there every summer for as long as anyone could remember. One of the boys, 11-year-old Lester Stilwell, noticed something in the water near him. He thought it was an old weather-beaten board, a waterlogged plank, the kind that drifts down any creek in America. Then he realized the plank was moving upstream, against the tide. A dorsal fin came out of the water. Before Lester could get to the bank, something pulled him under. The other boys ran into town screaming. A 24-year-old local businessman named Watson Stanley Fisher went into the creek after him. He did not come out either. And that same afternoon, further upstream near the Cliffwood Brickyard, a 12-year-old boy was bitten so badly in the leg that surgeons had to amputate it. Witnesses said the animal was around 9 feet long. 3 attacks, 1 creek, 1 afternoon, 11 miles from the sea. For 100 years, that afternoon has been treated as a freak event, a 1 in a million accident, something that happened once and could not happen again. Except that right now, in river systems along the American Gulf Coast, researchers pulling nets through the same kind of brown inland water are counting 5 times as many sharks as they found 20 years ago. In parts of Texas, 8 times as many as 40 years ago. They are not arriving, they are being born there, and nobody has yet found the point at which it stops. Which brings us back to the creek, because here is what makes 1916 the strangest case in the history of American shark attacks. And it is not the deaths. It is that according to everything science understood at the time, and according to a lot of what it understands now, the animal that did this could not have been there. Sharks are saltwater animals. Their entire body chemistry is built around living in the ocean. Put a typical shark in fresh water, and it does not swim upstream looking for people. It dies. Its cells swell, its blood chemistry collapses, and the animal fails from the inside out within hours. Matawan Creek was fresh and brackish water, 11 miles inland, shallow enough to stand in. A sea captain named Thomas Cottrell had actually seen an 8-foot shark in that creek earlier and told the town about it. They ignored him, not because they thought he was lying, because what he was describing was, as far as anyone knew, biologically impossible. And Matawan was not the beginning of it. 11 days earlier, a young man named Charles Van Sant was taken in the surf at Beach Haven in water shallow enough that people on the beach watched it happen. He bled to death on the manager's desk of a hotel. 5 days after that at Spring Lake, a bell captain named Charles Bruder swam out 130 yards as he had done many times, and a shark severed both his legs. A woman on the sand saw the water turn red and thought a canoe had capsized. After Bruder, 3 scientists held a hastily arranged press conference at the American Museum of Natural History and told the public what everybody wanted to hear. A 3rd attack was extremely unlikely. Sharks did not behave this way. 6 days later, Lester Stilwell went into Matawan Creek. 4 people died along that coast in 12 days. President Woodrow Wilson took it to a cabinet-level discussion. Resort towns strung steel nets across their beaches. And more than 100 years later, scientists are still arguing about what animal was in that creek. They have never settled it, and the reason they have never settled it is the interesting part. Because there is one shark that breaks the rule. One animal that can do the thing every textbook says a shark cannot do. It is the same animal being pulled out of those Gulf Coast nets in numbers that have gone up 5 and 8 times over. Stay with me, because before that means anything, you have to understand what we are actually talking about here. Great whites get the films. But if you rank sharks by how dangerous they actually are to human beings, 3 species account for nearly every serious attack on record, and the one most experts consider the most dangerous of the 3 is not the great white. It is a stocky, unglamorous, blunt-nosed animal that most people could not pick out of a photograph. Where a white shark is a long, tapered, deep-water torpedo built for speed, this one is short, thick, and heavy-shouldered, built for shallow, murky, close-quarters water. It does not need to see you. It hunts where visibility is measured in inches, using electroreception to find the electrical field of a heartbeat. It is also unusually aggressive. It has been documented headbutting things before biting them. Its reputation is not for being large or fast, it is for being difficult. And it does one thing that no other large predatory shark on Earth can do. It can live in fresh water, not visit, live. This is the bull shark, and it has a specialized system that lets it hold onto salt and dump water when it moves out of the ocean, adjusting its own internal chemistry on the move. Its kidneys and a specialized gland work together to keep it stable in water that would kill a great white in an afternoon. Which means rivers are not a barrier to it, they are a corridor, and it uses them. In 1937, 2 fishermen pulled a 5-foot, 84-pound bull shark out of the Mississippi River near Alton, Illinois. Alton is not a coastal town, it sits upriver from St. Louis. That shark was roughly 1,000 miles from the Gulf of Mexico, in the middle of the continent, in water that on any map is simply a river running past farmland. Another was confirmed in the same stretch decades later. Young bull sharks have been recorded inland in the Alabama River and the Mississippi. They have been found in lakes, in estuaries, in the brown, shallow water where American families swim every summer without thinking about it once. And from the shark side of it, a river mouth is not a wall. It is a road with food on it, warm and shallow and empty of anything large enough to threaten a young shark. Nothing else with teeth that size ever learned how to get in. So that is the animal that has always been the leading suspect for Matawan Creek. Not because anyone can prove it, because it is the only shark that could have been there at all. Now, here is why any of this matters in 2026 rather than 1916. Because researchers on the Gulf Coast have spent the last 2 decades doing something very unglamorous. People in small boats, dragging gill nets through estuaries at the mouths of rivers, counting what comes up, season after season for long enough that the noise cancels out, and whatever is underneath stops being deniable. 20 years of it in Alabama, 40 years of it in Texas. And when they finally put the numbers together, published in the Journal of Animal Ecology, the graph did something nobody was expecting. In coastal Alabama, in Mobile Bay, the relative abundance of baby bull sharks has increased 5-fold in 20 years. In Texas, in the estuaries running from Sabine Lake down to Matagorda Bay, it has increased up to 8-fold over 40 years. Not 5%, 5 times, 8 times, and the explanation is almost boringly simple, which is what makes it difficult to argue with. The Gulf of Mexico has warmed by more than 3 degrees Fahrenheit. Bull sharks like warm water. The researchers modeled it, and temperature was the single best explanation for the increase. But there is one detail in that study that is genuinely unsettling, and it is easy to miss. They looked for an upper limit, a temperature at which it stops being good for the sharks and starts being bad. Every animal has one. They did not find it. Across everything they recorded, there was no maximum temperature threshold for baby bull sharks. In the researchers' own framing so far, warmer is simply better. And warmer water does not only mean more of them, it means they stay longer. Warm estuaries let young bull sharks remain in the river systems where they were born for more of their first year before moving out into the Gulf for winter, and staying longer means more of them survive to the next stage of life. So it is not just that more are being born into these waters, it is that the water is holding them there, closer to shore, for longer, and pushing more of them through to adulthood. And that compounds. A juvenile bull shark is not a juvenile forever. It grows, leaves the river, and comes back to shallow coastal water as something else entirely. 7 feet, several hundred pounds. Every extra juvenile that survives its first winter is one more of those, roughly a decade from now. Meanwhile, the same warming is doing the opposite to other things. Mullet and flounder in the Gulf have declined as the heat disrupts their spawning. The estuaries are getting worse for the fish and better for the thing that eats them. And an estuary is not only a nursery. It is where the boat ramps are, where people wade out with a rod on a summer afternoon and stand waist deep without giving it a second thought. The least dramatic water in America. It is also on the numbers in that study, the fastest growing shark nursery on the continent. Now the honest limits, because they matter. This is not a story about individual sharks getting bigger. Nothing here says a bull shark today is larger than a bull shark in 1980. What is increasing is how many there are. The animals in the study are juveniles, and the researchers are direct about this. Baby bull sharks are not a cause for concern for people in these waters because they have not yet developed the ability to hunt large prey. You are still far more likely to be killed by bees, wasps, or snakes, and we still do not know what was in Matawan Creek. The bull shark is the leading suspect precisely because of the fresh water, but one leading ichthyologist has pointed out that the creek's actual depth and salinity were closer to a marine bay than anyone assumes, which leaves the great white in the running. His own summary is that the species has always been doubtful and probably always will be. But strip all of that away and something is left that should stay with you. For 100 years, the reason the Matawan attacks felt like a violation was that everybody knew where sharks belonged. They belonged out there, in the ocean, past the surf. The moment you were inland, in a creek, in a river, in brown water with a bank you could touch, you were somewhere a shark could not follow. That was never quite true. There was always one animal it was not true for. And there are now 5 times as many of them in Alabama as there were 20 years ago, 8 times as many in Texas as there were 40 years ago, and no one has yet found the temperature at which that stops. Not a shark arriving, not a shark wandering in and dying in fresh water the way people used to assume. Sharks being born inland, growing up inland, in water with houses along the bank, in numbers that go up every decade anyone bothers to count. The men who dismissed Thomas Cottrell in 1916 were not stupid. They knew where sharks lived, and a creek 11 miles from the sea was not on the list. They were wrong about the map. The line between the ocean and everywhere else was never a wall. It was just a place most sharks chose not to cross.